All right, so try not to bore you with the state legislation, but the basic idea is that the state has passed a wide variety of legislation that mandates in some cases and strongly encourages in other that the reduction of greenhouse gases. How that translates to both industry and local jurisdictions is for industry there are certain targets that are mandated that large polluters will have to meet. For local jurisdictions, it's or local governments, it's recommended that a city reduce its and the county reduce its emissions 15% below current levels by the year 2020. That is, it's encouraged or recommended, but the Attorney General has a unsavory tendency to follow up with nasty letters if you show a plan or don't have a plan or show a plan that does not achieve such reductions.
What's the consequence of a nasty letter?
Largely, it holds up the. If it was a general plan, it would hold up the EIR process. Larger projects can actually get potentially sued. The city of Stockton probably had the most serious issue where the Attorney General came in and basically shut down a whole specific planning area, and they had to do all these external issues they basically had set in negotiations to figure out between the developer, the city, and the Attorney General's a negotiated settlement there. SB 375, I mentioned earlier, that's the state legislation that sets regional vehicle emissions target. Luckily for Shasta, it's not a reduction, but it is a zero. It's a flatlining of vehicle emissions going forward. So accommodating growth and achieving that 0% growth target is still challenging. I guess the only
excuse me.
Yeah.
I'd like to interrupt for a second, Mayor, if I can. So they're setting a 0% growth over where we are right now.
Correct.
And we're going to figure that one out.
That's yes. My understanding is that the city would choose to work with RTPA and your own and figure that out yourself.
And if a community grows and there's an increase of 25% or 10% vehicles in that area, it would stand to reason, unless they're all electric vehicles, that we're going to have a growth here. What would be the penalty then for not meeting this particular Senate bill on the 375?
And that's complicated, but the short of it is that it's tied to regional transportation funds, and basically the region needs to show compliance with the state mandated target, and then they
withhold money.
That's my understanding, is that it hasn't been, nobody's suffered that yet, but that's the idea, that transportation funding could be in jeopardy.
I believe there also might be some CEQA consequences going forward. If you comply, or if you're able to maintain that zero or near zero, from a CEQA standpoint, you're much better off.
Right.
Than if we exceed it, then we run into more difficulties in that regard.
There is some streamlining. If you do attain the target, then some certain traditional development projects would be streamlined if they were compliant with the general plan.
Yeah.
Well, it would seem like it would pretty much restrict any development. And basically, is it your feeling that's the purpose of 375? Is to stop development of communities and growth?
It's
because we certainly don't have the technology at this point in time to have zero cars, or
right,
trucks, or diesels, or buses, or anything else at this point in time.
It's going to be a challenge. I'm not. And in certain parts of the state, obviously, it's easier where they can orient growth towards transit. In other states, they try to reflect that with a 0% growth. It's still a challenge. So, but yes, what we would propose is that the city figure out with RTPA how to meet that at this level, not us, come up with measures.
Well, we're at the core, at the heart of this whole thing now.
Yes.
Because it points out the importance of regional transportation planning. We have to, as we go forward, ensure that we are doing everything possible to, through proper planning of where we have growth, commercial, residential growth, to limit, to a degree possible, the vehicle miles traveled as a result of that growth. That's going to be the challenge. The only way, there may be some technological support through improvement in auto technology, but for the most part, it's going to be up to this region, not city by city or city by county, but this region to come up with plans that mitigate as much as possible the effect of greenhouse gases in our planning. So that's extremely important for us to all get a handle on what we're going to be required to do going forward.
Councilman Bosetti, to give you a real simple answer, local land use represents less than 5% of the total greenhouse gas issues statewide, which is a very, very small percentage. And the state has already acknowledged that Shasta County, as well as 5 other regions, are not big players in that. And so the notion that our local land use is somehow going to crumble under these laws is frankly absurd. What we're doing is we're essentially saying we have a lot of industries that are subject to these greenhouse gas laws that are going to be majorly impacted. We have cement kilns, we have power plants, we have a number of facilities that generate very large greenhouse gases. And so what we want to do is we want to put together a document here that's going to be able to, each jurisdiction is going to be able to use when they evaluate a project. We're more worried about CEQA projects than we are about local land use in transportation. That'll find its own way. The RTPAs will play the endless game with Caltrans and the feds, and they'll figure out how to deal with that. But what we don't have an answer to is the CEQA question. We're already getting lawsuits based on greenhouse gases. The Attorney General has already sued several jurisdictions on greenhouse gases. But what we're more worried about are opponents to projects. We have a power plant right now that we're working on that the opponents are lining up to sue the proponents of the project and the local jurisdiction on greenhouse gases. We need to have a document, aka a climate action plan, that gives us the parameters that we're working with to offset those greenhouse gases or to acknowledge them and what they mean. And we don't have that document. That's why we're working pretty quickly to do this, is to be able to support the projects that want to come into the community. One thing that I'm not sure if the council is aware or not, Stillwater Business Park is not shovel ready. I know you've heard that it is, but it's not. If any business manufacturer that comes in with a regulated emission wants to go in Stillwater Business Park, they're going to have an environmental review just for their emissions, and that includes greenhouse gases.